the people and nationalism all are linked with either geographic territory, race, or color or language. In that sense, people of Pakistan are a unique nation because we were born before Pakistan was created. Muslims of the continent came up with an assertion that they are a separate nation, although they did not own at that time a country, a land, or a piece of territory. Though Muslims existed in this continent for quite some time, even before Ibn Qasim came, they ruled the subcontinent for over 800 years. But ultimately, it was British imperialism that dominated, and they ruled over us for around 200 years. Consequently, our mindset and whatever we think today, the people before partition gradually realized that under British colonialism they cannot progress with their own culture and civilization. In that, both Muslims and Hindus shared. And consequently, in the name of freedom and liberty, Islam, the people of subcontinent joined together to liberate themselves from British colonialism. British realized that sooner or later we shall have to leave the country. But since European mindset and Indian mindset believed in territorial nationalism, therefore, at least on this one single point, the colonialists as well as the colonized Indians were unanimous that they are one Indian nation. And that's where the difference emerged. That's where the new concept of Muslims as a nation emerged. And Qaid-e-Azam, and with him, a number of scholars and activists joined together in making sure that the new concept is fully understood by the people. The Muslim League was led by Mr. Jinnah. It cooperated with Congress for a while because they had a common cause of liberating themselves from British colonialism. But they had two different objectives. For Hindus, it was a matter of following the so-called European democratic concept where majority rules. For the Qaid, it was very evident in post-1930 period that with all their claims of respecting Muslim culture, Hindu majority was never going to be fair to them. And therefore, the post-1930 understanding, life, and practice of the Qaid is completely different than pre-1930 mindset. He at one time was a champion of Hindu-Muslim unity. But now, since 1930, he realized this cannot work. So the new concept of Muslims as separate nation emerged. The credit goes to Allama Iqbal, who in 1930, when Qaid was in UK, but in Muslim League convention, he made a very crisp statement. That statement was, Islam does not bifurcate the unity of man into an irreconcilable duality of spirit and matter. In Islam, God and universe, spirit and matter, church and state are organic to each other. Man is not a citizen of a profane world to be renounced in the interest of a world of a spirit situated elsewhere. To Islam, matter is spirit realizing itself in space and time. Although he uses a bit philosophical language, but the meaning is very, very clear that in Islam there is no separation between state and religion, and therefore Muslims are not a nation based on ethnicity, language, or color, but it is Islam that makes them one single nation. And this idea was further elaborated in 1933 in a response given by Abul Ala Maududi in his small booklet, Masala Qawmiyat. He responded to Shaykh al-Hadith Maulana Hussain al-Madani's well-known position, where he joined in his approach with the Indian Congress with Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, that those who are born and raised in this part of the world are one single nation. It's very strange that a person of Abul Kalam Azad's caliber, who knew the Quran very well, who was at one time champion for Masala Khilafat, and at the same time a rector of religious seminary, they both agreed on a concept which was against Quran and Sunnah. We find very interesting analysis by a well-known historian and Muslim League activist, Dr. Shifa College, who was at one time Vice-Chancellor of Karachi University. In his book, he refers to this phenomenon. And then he says, in fact, Maulana Maududi's rejoinder to Muttahida Qawmiyat or Islam by Maulana Hussain al-Madani was so logical, authoritative, polite, and devastating. It was beyond the capacity of any supporter of a united nationhood to counter. Maulana Maududi pointed out that Maulana Hussain al-Madani has been carried away by his hatred of the British and had twisted history and facts. Are nations really created by political boundaries? If they are, why are ethnical, cultural, and religious conflicts endemic in many states, including the European countries? Maulana Hussain al-Madani had indulged in a willful distortion of Arabic dictionary and even the meaning of verses of the Quran. He had no business to use a well-known word like nation in any sense except the one internationally assigned to it. The Muslim and Jews of Medina did not form a single nation even after the Prophet had brought about an alliance between them for a short while after his migration from Makkah to Medina, unquote. Here, Dr. Qureshi makes it very clear that a very strong, well-documented approach and concept was put forth by Abdullah Maududi in support of Pakistan movement, and particularly for separate nationalism, which was the basis of Pakistan's creation. Then, unfortunately, as ungrateful people, we have forgotten a number of our benefactors. In that reference, most humbly, I will ask the existing audience, our faculty members, and those who are joining the webinar, to think about this name, Muhammad Asad, and tell me, have they ever in any writing on Pakistan movement found his name? Have they ever heard who he was? Very few Pakistanis know that Asad was one of the freedom fighters. Very few know that he was not a Pakistani by birth. Very few know he was not a Punjabi, a Baloch, a Sindhi, a Pathan, or a Muhajir, or whatever we call ourselves, but he came from Austria and became a Muslim and became a fighter for Islam in Pakistan. he was involved in the movement. And in 1947, in his well-known journal, Riphah, he recaps what's the meaning of Pakistan. And I quote, I do believe and have believed for about 14 years that there is no future of Islam in India until Pakistan becomes a reality. That if it becomes a reality here, it might bring about a spiritual revolution in the whole Muslim world by proving it is possible to establish an ideological Islamic polity in our own times. No less than it was possible 30 million years ago. But ask yourselves, are all leaders of Pakistan movement and the intelligentsia which forms its spearhead quite serious in their avowals that Islam and nothing else but Islam provides the ultimate inspiration of their struggle? Are they really aware of what it implies when they say the objective of Pakistan is La ilaha illallah? Do we all mean the same when we talk about dream of Pakistan? This is 1947. It's not 2022, where people raise the question, should Pakistan be secular? Assad at that point is saying the leadership of Muslim League is confused, except a few. And therefore, although they are claiming Pakistan means La ilaha illallah, but not all of them understand what they are saying. He continues and tells us, if the meaning of our struggle for Pakistan is truly to be found in the words of La ilaha illallah, our present behavior must be a testimony of our coming nearer and nearer to this ideal. That is, of becoming better Muslims, not only in our words, but in our actions as well. It should be our leaders' duty to tell their followers that they must become better Muslims today in order to be worthy of Pakistan tomorrow. Instead of which, they merely assure us that we shall become better Muslims as soon as Pakistan is achieved. This was said by Muslim League leaders. We will become good Muslims. Don't worry what you're doing today. While Assad and Abdullah Maududi were saying, let's build the human resource before we have the country. And let's prove it by our behavior, not by our words. It's not only Assad, but interestingly, even some non-Muslim observers, including Cantwell Smith, whom I knew personally, in his book, Islam in Modern History, talks about Pakistan and says, in the Pakistan case, the whole Reza death of the state was Islam. It was Islam at first brought it into being, and that continued to give it meaning. The purpose of setting up the state was to enable Muslims here to take up once again the task of implementing their faith also in political realm. Pakistan came into being as only an Islamic state, not because its form was ideal, but because insofar as its dynamic was idealist. To set up an Islamic state then was the beginning, not the end of an adventure. To achieve an Islamic state was to attain not a form but a process. Cantwell Smith was teaching in Foreman Christian College while Pakistan movement was going on. He was an eyewitness. He taught in Aligarh University and knew very well differences between Hindus and Muslims. And with all that background, as a non-committed, impartial person, that's how he looks on the issue. But unfortunately, a number of elites in Pakistan for the last 70 years has been raising questions about the very base of the country. Let's now, with this background, try to understand what was I's own understanding. And without interpreting the I have tried to select some of his speeches, statements, and those statements tell us outspokenly what is his mind. So we don't have to interpret those and look for different meaning. Riphah says, it's extremely difficult to appreciate why our Hindu friends fail to understand the real nature of Islam and Hinduism. They are not religions in the strict sense of the word, but are, in fact, different and distinct social orders. And it is a dream that Hindus and Muslims can ever evolve a common nationality. And this misconception of one Indian nation has gone far beyond the limits and is the cause of most of your troubles and will lead India to destruction if we fail to revise our nation in time. The Hindus and Muslims belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs, and literature. They neither intermarry nor interdine together. And indeed, they belong to two different civilizations which are based mainly on conflicting ideas and conceptions. Their aspects on life and of life are different. It's quite clear that Hindus and Muslims derive their inspirations from different sources of history. They have different epics, different heroes, and different episodes. Very often, the hero of one is a foe on the other hand. Likewise, their victories and defeats overlap. To yoke together two such nations under a single state, one as a numerical minority, another as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be so built up for the government of such a state. And what he said on March 22nd, 1940, can be seen today in India. The majority, which claims to be saffron wearers, the way they behave with the religious minorities, Christians, Buddhists, Dalits, Muslims, is evident. And therefore, as a visionary, Qaid knew very well that this whole concept of one nation or secularity is not going to work in the case of Muslims unless they have a separate state of their own. Then we find again the Qaid telling us what is the basis of nationhood. It is the great book, Quran, that is sheet anchor of Muslim India. I'm sure that as we go on and on, there will be more and more of oneness, one God, one book, one Qibla, one Prophet, and one nation. Very clearly, he is telling us what are the steps of building nation. Starting with Tawheed, with the Quranic guidance, with one single direction, with one and only Prophet. These are the foundations, pillars of the nation. And therefore, it's not a matter of how we look at him, but how he said very clearly is to be understood. Again, and I have tried to highlight the historical sequence in terms of statements. It's February 1943, when he's saying, I have often made it clear that if Muslims wish to live as honorable and respect people, there is only one course open to them: fight for Pakistan, live for Pakistan, if necessary die for the achievement of Pakistan, or else Muslims Islam are doomed. Recall the nearly same words which Assad has used in his statement. Then there is only one course open to us to organize our nation, and it is by our own dint of arduous and sustained and determined efforts that we create strength and support our people, not only to achieve our freedom and independence, but to be able to maintain and live according to Islamic ideals and principles. The more democratic form of government is not suitable to the genus of the Indian people. We want a true democracy in accordance with Islam and not a parliamentary government of the Western and Congress type. This is 1943. There is no sit-in by any ulama. There is no pressure on Jinnah. And Jinnah was not a person who will ever yield to any pressure. A man of strong nerves, a man of will, a man of clear vision and honesty. And therefore, what he's saying in 1943 is his own view. It's not a matter of some ulama came and influenced him and then he started talking about Islam. Again, 943. In Pakistan, we shall have a state which will be run according to the principles of Islam. It will have its cultural, political, economic structure based on the principles of Islam. Then he says, the non-Muslims need not fear because of this, for fullest justice will be done to them. They will have their full cultural, religious, political, economic rights safeguarded. As a matter of fact, they will be more safeguarded than in the present day so-called democratic parliamentary form of government. In every statement, he is critical of Western parliamentary system where just majority prevails. He is all for Islamic system where reason should prevail, logic should prevail, benefit of people should prevail, and not just a numerical majority. Then 945, sending message to Frontier Muslim Student Federation. Pakistan not only means freedom from independence, but the Muslim ideology, which has to preserve what has come to us as a precious gift and treasure, and which we hope others will share with us. It is the word Muslim ideology. While I remember some of the discussions in the past few decades, people said that these words have been borrowed by some religious scholars, and they are using it today, while it is the Qaid who has used it in 1945. Next, please. Again, 947. The establishment of Pakistan, for which we have been striving for the last 10 years, is by the grace of God an established fact today. But the creation of a state of our own was means to an end and not the end itself. The idea was that we should have a state in which we could live and breathe as free men, and in which we could develop according to our own lights and culture, and where principles of Islamic social justice could find free play. This is addressing civil and military officers in 1947, October 11, which is a post-August 11, 47 speech, and it tells us very clearly that whatever is attributed to him in August 11 speech is ideas of people, not what Qaeda said. He is very clear that we need a structure based on Islamic social justice. Then again, October 30th, 1947. And here he is addressing the rally in Lahore University Stadium. Do not be overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. There is many an example in history of young nations building themselves up by sheer determination and force of character. You are made of sterling material and are second to none. Why should you also not succeed like many others, like your own forefathers? You have only to develop the spirit of the mujahids, a word which we think nowadays not to be used in civilized conversations. He says, you are a nation whose history is replete with people of wonderful gifts, character, and heroism. Live up to your traditions and add to it only another chapter of glory. All I require of you now is that every one of us to whom this message reaches must bow to himself and be prepared to sacrifice his all, if necessary, in building up Pakistan, a bulwark of Islam, a fortress of Islam, and as one of the greatest nations whose ideal is peace within and peace without. So again, he is emphasizing, which shows that he has a uniformity of thought. He is not responding emotionally or spontaneously on situations, but well thought ideas, well formulated ideology, which he is trying to communicate. February 1448, at Sibi Darbar, It's my belief that our salvation lies in following the golden rules of conduct set for us by our great lawgiver, the Prophet of Islam. Let us lay the foundations of our democracy on the basis of truly Islamic ideals and principles. Our Almighty has taught us our decisions in the affairs of the state shall be guided by discussions and consultation. He quotes from Surah Ash-Shura. Can a secular person use this language who had only one face? He was not a man of two faces. If he wanted to say, I want to have Pakistan secular, he will say it. He will not hesitate. Therefore, the statement is outspoken and does not need any interpretation or elaboration. February 1948, again, addressing the people of the United States of America. This dominion, which represents the fulfillment in a certain measure of the cherished goal of 100 million Muslims of this subcontinent, came into existence in August 1547. Pakistan is the premier Islamic state and the fifth largest in the world. We willy-nilly in 1956 said in our first draft of constitution that Pakistan is Islamic state. But the founder in 1948 is saying Pakistan is premier Islamic state. So we declared it already as Islamic state. Addressing the Ek regiment in the Malid, and if anyone goes there, they can find this flag at the entrance gate of this establishment of the army. You have fought many a battle on the far-flung field of the globe to get rid of the world of the fascist menace and make it safe for democracy. Now we have to stand guard over the development and maintenance of Islamic democracy, Islamic social justice, and equality of mankind in your own native soil. Which means the men in uniform and those who are civilian all have same responsibility to make sure that Islamic principles of democracy, Islamic justice prevails in the country and not the Western system. Then we find that addressing on January 25th, 48, and all these are post-August 11 statements. He was addressing at Khalid Jinnah Hall at the Bar Association of Karachi. Jinnah, Governor of Pakistan, speaking at a reception given to him on the birthday of Holy Prophet by the Bar Association of Karachi, said, "No doubt there are many people who do not quite appreciate when we talk of Islam. Islam is not only a set of rituals, traditions, and spiritual doctrines. Islam is also a code for every Muslim, which regulates his life and his conduct, even in politics and economics and the like. It is based on the highest principles of honor and integrity, fair play, and justice for all." He further said he could not understand a section of the people who deliberately wanted to create mischief and made propaganda that Constitution of Pakistan would not be made on the basis of Sharia. The Qaid said Islamic principles today are as applicable to life as they were years ago, which means that what was done centuries ago as Sharia is relevant today. So he corrected the propaganda made by a well-known anti-Pakistan activist, Dr. Khan Said. Then addressing the people of US, he says, the Constitution of Pakistan has yet to be framed by the Pakistan Constitutional Assembly. I do not know what the ultimate shape of this constitution is going to be, but I am sure it will be of democratic type, embodying essential principles of Islam. Today, they are as applicable in actual life as they were 1,000 years ago. Islam and its idealism have taught us democracy, which means, again, uniformity of thought. What I said earlier, that Islam was not something of the past, but it is applicable today, and we are going to implement it. It has taught equality of men, justice and fair play to everybody. We are the inheritors of these glorious traditions and are fully alive to our responsibilities and obligations as framers of the future constitution of Pakistan. In any case, Pakistan is not going to be a theocratic state, to be ruled by priests with a divine mission. And this again has been a unanimous view of Qaid-e-Azam, Allama Asad, Abul Ala Maududi, and many others, that Pakistan cannot be a theocracy where a group of people who think they are immune, who get direct guidance from their God as priests, as divine representatives. Pakistan is going to be Islamic state, not a theocratic state. We have many non-Muslims, Hindu, Christians, and Parsis, but they are all Pakistanis. They will enjoy the same rights and privileges as any other citizen and will play their rightful part in the affairs of Pakistan. Again, before he passed away, this is perhaps his last statement of July 1st, 48, where he is inaugurating the research wing of State Bank of Pakistan. I shall watch with keenness the work our research organization is evolving banking practices compatible with Islamic ideals of social economic life. The economic system of the West has created almost insolvable problems to humanity. And to many of us, it appears that only a miracle can save it from disaster. That's now facing the world. And we saw it in 2008, the crash of economy in the West, the demonstrations in 100 economic capitals of the world. Everything proved what the Jinnah was visualizing. The adoption of Western economic theory and practice will not help us in achieving our goal of creating happy and content people. We must work our destiny in our own way and prove to the world an economic system based on true Islamic concepts of equality of mankind and social justice. We will thereby be fulfilling our mission as Muslims and giving to humanity the message of peace, which alone can save it and secure the welfare, happiness, and prosperity of mankind. Which means that we will export our economic doctrines, our success story, if we apply Islam in the country, and that alone can save the world from the capitalist decline and fall. This is something very interesting. And again, I very humbly ask all those who are watching this discussion, very few of us know the name of our country, how it came. We know that Rahmat Ali in 1930s, and I have his letter photographed here, original letter he wrote on January 1933 to the Home Secretary of Britain, where he said that he is requesting the state to consider 30 million people who live in this concentrated area to be identified as separate state. And for that, he proposed the name PAKSTAN. P for Punjab, A for Afghanistan and NWFP, K for Kashmir, and STAN for Balochistan. And he elaborates that in his letter. But what nation never knew till this statement, which I have printed in my book. On March 24, 1940, a day after Lahore Resolution, Khwaja Abdul Rahim, one of those who in Cambridge proposed the name of country, invited the Qaid at his residence. The Qaid told him, Rahim, the name you gave in 1930 is highly talked about in the press. Khwaja Rahim asked the Qaid, then what should be the name in your view? Allama Iqbal in those days had endorsed this name. The Qaid said, and it's very important to listen to it very carefully. If you people and the Muslim nation like this name, I have no objection, except in the name you have on pamphlet Pakistan, add I. which stands for Islam, and is the link between these provinces. I'm afraid for over 70 years, do we find any single textbook on Pakistani studies? Do we find a single research paper published by a Pakistani intellectual on Pakistan? Do we find a single book written by a non-Pakistani where a reference is made to the name of the country, where I was inserted by the founder himself, stating this is for Islam and it cannot be separated from the country? It's very strange phenomena. If a child from 5th grade knows the flag of the country and name of the country which carries Islam, how can this child, when grows up, can doubt his or her identity? Yet, we as a nation have been neglecting historical facts. We never go for facts. We go for what is hearsay, and unfortunately, a secular lobby for over 70 years has dominated academically, intellectually, and in media. Then what was his overall Islamic understanding? Was he a secular person? On September 8, 45, in Eid message, he says, what is it that keeps the Muslims united? And what is bedrock and sheet anchor of the community? It is Islam. Everyone except those who are ignorant know that the Quran is the general code of the Muslims: religious, social, civil, commercial, military, judicial, criminal, and penal code. It regulates everything from ceremonies of religious to those of daily life. It is a complete code regulating the whole Muslim society in every development of life, collectively and individually. Here he makes it very clear that Islam is not a personal faith. It's not individual faith. But Islam means a collective system where economy, commercial activities, military, judiciary, everything is to be done according to the Quran and Sunnah. And these are his words. These are not what I am saying. These are his words which have never been highlighted by this nation and its intellectuals. The only thing we hear is this, and that is August 11 Potsdam speech. And in this speech, somehow people try to discover a terminology Jinnah never used all his life. He never used the word secular. When he was interviewed by a representative of a writer and Agency France Press and others, and they tried to corner him, he never used the word secular in all the interviews. So anyhow, what he said, if you just read it, the full text, it itself refutes the claim that he wanted secularity. You are free to go to your temple, you are free to go to your mosque or to any other place of worship in the state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion or caste or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state. As you know, history shows that in England, conditions some time ago were much worse than those prevailing in India today. Roman Catholics and Protestants persecuted each other. Even now, there are some states in existence where there are discriminations made and bars imposed against a particular class. The people of England, in course of time, had to face the realities of the situation and had to discharge the responsibilities and burdens placed upon them by the government of their country, and they went through that step by step. Today, you might say with justice that Roman Catholics and Protestants do not exist. What exists now is that every man is a citizen, an equal citizen of Great Britain, and they are members of the nation. Now, I think we should keep that in front of us as our ideal, and you will find that in course of time, Hindus would cease to be Hindus, Muslims would cease to be Muslims, not in the religious sense, because there is personal faith of each individual, but in the political sense, a citizen of the state. What it means very simply is state will not discriminate based on religion. Nowhere he's saying state will be secular, because the over a dozen statements I picked up out of 100 statements, which I have shared with you continuously from 1940 till 1948 when he passed away. There is only one approach, only one concept, only one idea which he is propagating. And therefore, this alone statement cannot be taken out as the only statement. We have to read it in terms of his other statements. Therefore, based on all these, Javed Iqbal makes a very interesting conclusion out of that. The foundation of the state, therefore, could not possibly be laid on such perceptions as common race, common language, and common territory. The real factor which sustains the state of Pakistan is the existence of a consciousness among the people of belonging to each other. Became a large majority of them, because a large majority of them adhere to a common spiritual aspiration, faith in Islam. It is for this reason that Quaid-e-Azam proclaimed at public meeting held in Dhaka in 1948, Islam has taught us this, and I think you will agree with me that whatever else you may be, and whatever you are a Muslim. You belong to a nation now. You have now carved out a territory, vast territory. It's all yours. It does not belong to a Punjabi or a Sindhi or a Pathan or a Bengali. It is yours. Which means that now a new nation has to be recognized, and that must exist. Consequently, by the basis of nationhood, Pakistan is Islam. Islam acted as nation building force long before submission of Pakistan. Hence, the historical fact which cannot be denied is that formation of Muslim nation preceded the demand for a homeland. This is what Javed Iqbal holds, that in view of Qai's various opinions and statements, Muslim nation came into existence before Pakistan. Just to conclude my discussion on a very moving statement of the Qai, in 1939 he addresses the Muslim League convention, and there he says, I have seen enough of the world and possess a lot of wealth. I have enjoyed all comforts of life. Now my only desire is to see the Muslims flourish and prosper as an independent community. I want to leave this world with a clean conscience and content with the feeling that Jinnah had not betrayed the cause of Islam and the Muslims. I do not want your praise nor any certificate. I only want that my heart, my conscience, and my faith should prove at the time of my death that Jinnah died defending Islam and cause of the Muslims. May my God testify that Jinnah lived and died a Muslim, fighting against the forces of kuffar and holding the flag of Islam high. Can a person who has confusion about his faith make this statement publicly? No one is asking him, what is your faith? Are you a Muslim, a modernist, a liberal, or what? He is giving his belief from his heart and publicly, not in any sort of pressure. Then we find again in 1945, Maulana Mohani, a very well-known Muslim League leader, visited Quaid-e-Azam at his residence in Delhi, 10 Aurangzeb Road, and was told that he does not like to meet people at this evening hour. It was time for Maghrib prayer. The Maulana prayed in the lawn and then started walking in the corridor. He heard some whispers and thought the Qaid is talking with someone. He tried to peep into his room. What he saw was a good by him. Quotation. The Qaid was sitting on prayer rug and was praying to Allah for the success of the Muslim with tears and sobs. This is an eyewitness statement of a person who was fully involved in Pakistani struggle, a well-known thinker, a scholar, and a leader of Muslim League. This quick review of just a few selections from the statements of Qaid-e-Azam indicate very clearly that a large portion of his personality, a large portion of his ideas has not been shared with the nation, and that I regard as intellectual dishonesty. Nation should know what his ideas were. No one has the authority to suppress very clear ideas of the reform of the nation. And I feel it's an obligation on me and the coming generation to make sure that the real face of the founder and the real ideas of not only the founder, but the whole group of people who were involved in Pakistani struggle, such as Muhammad Asad, Liaqat Ali Khan, many others, those need to be properly shared with the coming generation. And every single teacher in this country has an obligation to objectively conduct research, find out facts, and pass those facts on to coming generations. This is the task of any educational program. And we in this country have enormous responsibility to make sure that country's ideology as realized by the founder is not shrouded in confusions and in statements which he never made. So thank you very much for your patience and listening to me for rather extended period. I'm available for any questions you have on my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for highly informative and enlightening talk. Now I would request Dr. Fahad Azam, Associate Professor Pharmacology, Shifa College of Medicine, to take few questions from the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Shazia. Sir, we have many interesting questions from many participants here.
Please.
And the first one is by Dr. Kulsoom, who is the faculty, and she's in charge of Pakistan Studies curriculum at SCM. And her question is that Pakistan Studies and Islamiyat are supposed to be taught in medical colleges as part of the curriculum. So in your opinion, which aspects of Pakistan Studies should be taught in medical colleges as part of the curriculum to revive simultaneously nationalism in Pakistani youth and Islamic perspective of making of Pakistan?
You know, Pakistan Studies is a required subject by constitutional directive. And therefore, the state of Pakistan, willingly or unwillingly, has made the requirement in a 4-year program, 2 credit hours are to be assigned for Pakistan studies and 2 credit hours for Islamic studies. Assuming that 2 credit hours of Islam and 2 of Pakistan studies can give enough to a student in 4 years academic. The very conception is against any educational understanding. If it was a summer course, we can think a makeup course for 2 credit hours, which can work. But for ideology of a country, history of a country, it's highly deficient. What has not been done is the philosophy, the purpose, and the objective. What has been narrated in a very boring manner in every book of Pakistani studies, Islamic studies, is traditional historical aspects. In Pakistan studies, emphasis on certain resolutions, certain facts, certain events historically, and then jumping to Pakistan history of a checkered history where political parties played a very irresponsible role. That is taught, which makes them very much depressed about their own country. What they are never taught is Pakistan movement's ideological basis, which I try to highlight. And this is just a few aspects. I have yet to find out one single research work taught in our universities on Pakistan where the speech of Liaquat Ali Khan in the parliament when he was introducing the objectives resolution is ever quoted. Liaquat Ali Khan in that speech in detail tells us why we fought for Pakistan, what we want in Pakistan, and answers all those questions which have been raised again and again in the name of minorities. But never. Which means there has been a conscious effort on the part of a group of intellectuals to suppress real Pakistan ideology. So, in my view, Pakistan studies should focus more on ideological foundation of the country than just historical facts.
Thank you so much, sir. We have another question from Dr. Abda Shaheen, who wants to unmute herself and ask the question herself. So, Dr. Abda, you can unmute yourself and please ask it.
Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Fahad. It's Dr. Abda Shaheen. I am Professor of Pharmacology. Thank you so much, Dr. Anis, for such an inspiring talk. It was really enlightening. Especially, we often forget to tell our children about the origin of Pakistan word. Immediately after this webinar, I'm going to tell the children, my children, about the origin of Pakistan. It was really profound and beautiful. Okay, I want to ask that traditionally, social sciences are not part of the medical curriculum. So in your opinion, what is the importance of social sciences in 21st century integrated curriculum, and what aspects of social sciences should be prioritized for medical professionals? Partly you answered it, partially you gave the answer before what Dr. Kulsoom asked, but other aspects of social sciences like economics, politics, behavioral sciences, they have already been included in some parts of the curriculum, but what is the importance of social sciences in the medical curriculum? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the scheme of studies which has been developed in Europe and America is based on their basic conception of human being, universe, and divinity. They have a very clear concept that church, synagogue, and temple may be a need of some people, but they have no relationship with society. Society should be ruled by utility, and therefore, so long something has utility, it is good for us. It is utility that I get some benefit by doing economic activity, utility by way of political activity. I benefit from that and we benefit from that. Everything is based on utility. Therefore, social sciences are essentially based on material needs of society and human beings. They are totally devoid of a huge area which relates with mannerism, morality, spirituality, human interaction. All these aspects are completely missing. We make a good surgeon, a good engineer, a good economist who has memorized Gray's Anatomy, who has memorized Harold Lasky's book on political science, who has memorized Dalcourt Parson for sociology, or who has memorized Sigmund Freud for psychology, and so on and so forth. But whatever the person has learned in that discipline has nothing to do with how should he behave with his parents, with his own children, with his wife, with society, with people who are down to poverty, how to interact with them. Nothing of that sort is provided. Some aspect of so-called Maashrati Ulum or social sciences are given in our educational system, but those are just translation of Western theories. Nothing is mentioned. For example, tell me, has anyone in this country or in Europe or anywhere else who has graduated as engineer or medical doctor or political scientist gone through a course where the person is educated and fully trained in how to live family life? People discover family life by the trial and error. They never know what's the meaning of family life. What's the meaning of family as such? Does family mean husband, wife, and 2 children, which we claim for last 20 years in our media? Is this the meaning of family? And how to live within those 2 children? Therefore, the curricula of all applied sciences and social sciences are extremely deficient. The one who studies economics knows only about how Paul Samuelson in his textbook on economics defines economy and economic development. And same, the one who is doing his research in engineering knows only whatever is in electrical engineering or biomedical engineering or by civil engineering, nothing more than that. So all disciplines with the social sciences or applied sciences lack what is big part of human life. Therefore, it's not the social sciences. The social sciences themselves are to be reconstructed. In social sciences, we have to bring those dimensions which are missing. Social sciences are reductionist. They reduce society to one dimension. A psychiatrist looks on everyone as a psychic case. Sociologist looks on everyone as a stratified structure of society. The political scientist looks on everyone as a potential voter, nothing more than that. Therefore, reductionism of social sciences, which in my view is the big problem, has to be overcome. And we have to make social sciences holistic. They are not present. None of those, neither in the East nor the West. So your question requires much more to be said, but I'm pressed by the time, and that should be enough.
Thank you so much, sir. We actually have many questions coming up, but because of the limitation of time, we will be able to take only 2 more questions. One question is by Dr. Mariam Habib from the Department of Pathology, and she says that apparently now it seems like that Pakistan has not done very well in many areas, and we are struggling badly as a nation and as a country, even though we have great potential. So in your opinion, what is the biggest and most important reason that Pakistan has not done as well as it should have done?
I think the major problem is confusion of the leadership. Unless leadership has a vision and clarity of vision, we cannot move forward. And on that count, to be very neutral, even if a leadership claims to be secular, but with clarity, it will work for a while. And leadership with Islam with clarity will definitely succeed. But we have neither one. The most secular of the secular of this country had no courage to claim secularity publicly. They always said that our economy is to be taken from the West, our faith to be taken from Makkah, and our social system to be taken from the former Soviet Union's experience, a combination. They never had the courage to say, just have secularity and period, and prove that. Therefore, for us, as the Qaid said, the only option for us is to have Islam as total way of life and not just a ritual, not just a faith of individual, but as a basis for our economic development, for our social development, for our defense development, for everything. And only then we can progress and make a difference in the world.
Thank you so much, sir. There is one question, actually that question is in continuation to what you have just said. And the question is by Dr. Maruk from the Department of Health Professions Education, and she's asking that there is absolutely no contest on ideology behind creation of Pakistan. But now that we are an independent nation, can we separate state from religion without compromising the fundamental principles of Islam?
You see, your question carries a contradiction itself. Islam means accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the ultimate authority. This ultimate authority is not confined in masjid. If we confine Allah in masjid and disregard the Quran which says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sovereign over everything, samawat wal ard, then we can have a possibility of separation. But if we follow the Quran, there cannot be a separation. We cannot have a mosque where we go and say, Allah, you are great. But when we go to parliament, we say, Robert's rule, you are great. When we go to stock market, we say, Adam Smith, whatever you said is true. These three different approaches will make us a hodgepodge. Therefore, Islam means if we accept Allah as authority and say, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah, then Allah should rule in my economic dealings and tell me how honestly I should produce my industrial product, how honestly I should deliver to my client everything. And same he should tell me in political life, how I should fulfill my obligations as a parliamentarian, as a judge, as a president, as a prime minister, as a citizen. Unless all these things are told to me by the Quran, how can I claim to be a Muslim? To be a Muslim means that a person has accepted Allah's authority in all aspects of life. What leads us to make such statements is a over 200 years old repeated statement by our textbooks, which tell us that state and religion are two separate things. And these are separate because since 16th century, Europe thought that church was authoritarian. Let us get rid of church, liberate ourselves, and ask church to remain in its territories and not to come outside the territory. Now that is the concept of Western political system, Western economy, Western society, which has been for 200 years imposed on us, and we also by our choice have read all those books which make us believe that religion can be separated. While Islam tells us that deen is in everything. Islam is not religion, it's not a maslak, but Islam is way of life. And as way of life, it tells us, as you have heard several statements of Qaid-e-Azam, where he says that Islam is not just rituals, Islam is our direction of economy, direction of legal system, everything. So we have to make sure that at least those who are educators, those who are teachers and researchers, they should ensure that their own concept of Islam as total way of life is very, very clear. Islam cannot allow us to salute Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Friday and say you are great. But on Monday, say Wall Street, you are great. On Tuesday, say Bollywood, you are great. On Wednesday, say Chinese economy, you are great. If we keep on doing that, do you think we are in our senses? Therefore, Islam means no separation between so-called religion and so-called world. Islam means what the Quran tells us, say, my prayer, my life, my living, my death, my offerings, everything is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I am not from mushrikeen, which means that if I separate these things, I become a mushrik. If I separate my offerings, my prayer, and my life and my death, and say, my life is for X, death for Y, and economy for Z, then this is shirk. The ayah says very clearly. So according to the Quran, we cannot separate what is normally known as religion. The word religion has not been used by the Quran or Sunnah anywhere. The word deen has been used, and deen means totality and not separation.
Thank you, sir. So through these few questions, we have covered almost all of the questions asked by the participants. So Dr. Shazia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fahad. Now I would request Vice-Chancellor, Shifa College of Medicine University, and Professor of Surgery, Professor Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, to say a few words regarding the session.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I thank Professor Saab. He is teacher of teachers and professors of professors. Mashallah, I have been enlightened by his knowledge and his scholarly thoughts over the last 25 years since I know him. I went through his book, probably it's not here. I went through his book, which he has recently written on the very different parts of and the deliberation of Muhammad Ali Jinnah regarding the system of political system in this country and about the economical system and everything in this country. And this has been deliberately not highlighted by several people, and probably I think this is not the honesty with the nation as well, as we hide the thoughts of Kyle in such a way that people and our coming generations are blind about the real efforts which have been put in the building of Pakistan. So I think one of the important aspects which I learned through his book is that we should inculcate these ideas from the very beginning, from the childhood to the specialized education. We cannot prepare a wholesome personality or wholesome a personality which is desired for our social fabric as well. A doctors or engineer or whosoever the specialist is, if he is if he's facing difficulty in assimilation of his practice in our society and cannot direct the people towards the right path. So I think together, inshallah, if the higher seats of learning like universities and DIs, if they combine together their efforts and we come up with some unified or a curriculum which is not mere a segmental curriculum in the sociology and this and that, but it could be a unified curriculum to prepare the wholesome personality. Unfortunately, this duality of mind have been created in our mind from very beginning. I remember my childhood when in the morning we used to go to school, in the evening we go to mosque, and we faced into two different sphere of life there. And this duality of mind has actually divided our brains, our minds, our ideas, our action, and everything. So I think this is the time now that we think that whether we are going to this transfer to our kids, to our children, rather it is worse in our children. They don't have even a bigger idea, a very small idea regarding the real efforts which was done in the building of Pakistan or in the struggle for Pakistan. So thank you very much, sir, for all your efforts. May Allah bless and reward you for everything which you do. And I suggest the librarians of all the 4 or 5 libraries to keep these books available for the faculty as well as for the students, so that they can be enlightened by the real thoughts of the guy, which has been unfortunately masked by the different authorities. And I think we always say that ये काम यहूदियों ने किया है या ये काम जो है ना इस्लाम के दुश्मनों ने किया, बड़ा मतलब easy है, but we don't think that whether we have done our job or not. So let's start with the consolidating our own ideas first, and then integrating in the minds and in the brains of the coming generation. This is our responsibility. If we don't do now, then probably we are not doing our job being teachers. We are all teachers. I believe there are more than 80 teachers sitting in this, listening and participating in this webinar. But there are medical teachers, but we have other faculties as well. I wish that you would spare some time to enlightening the other faculties as well with your thoughts and with your ideas. And thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to Dean at Shifa College of Medicine and Dean Health Sciences for willingly contributing in organizing this webinar. We have been actually doing it for the last 2-3 months, but because of the COVID situation, because of the situation in the country, we couldn't be avail these thoughts, but they are alhamdulillah. We have now concluded, and we are very grateful for everything which you did and for taking time early in the morning coming here. And I'm ashamed for coming late because of the some social reasons as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Thank you.
I would now request Dean Faculty of Health Sciences and Professor of Surgery, Professor Dr. Muhammad Amir, to say a few words and conclude this session with dua.
Thank you very much. I think whatever has been said by our worthy guest and speaker, I think it has opened up new vistas of thoughts and ideas in our minds. And I would not like to add anything to that, because I think whatever has been said and discussed and described by him should stay in our mind for such a long time, that we also keep on discussing within our own family and with our students and within ourselves, that the new concepts, the new vision, and the new version of our ideology that has been portrayed today should stay in our mind and should be a guiding principle for all of us. So thank you very much once again. And I don't think so I need to add anything on that again, because I want this as a legacy for quite some time for all of our minds to stay on. And thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal asr. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
The token of memory visited us, mashallah. And this has been actually prepared on 18 December, which is I think first organized it, but unfortunately because of the different reasons we couldn't do that. Thank you very much for coming and everything. Thank you very much.
yes, sir.
Thank you.